This is time now for our very last guest. He's a world-renowned Italian architect and designer. He's a bridge between disciplines. He won 8 times the Golden Compass Awards, among other awards. He has worked on worldwide projects as architect, such as airports, office buildings, or residential buildings and museums like the National Gallery of Victoria, Melbourne, Australia, just to give you one. From 1985 to 1991, he edited Domus magazine, one of the most internationally recognized publications in the design field. The MoMA in New York dedicated him a personal retrospective in 1987, and we are thrilled to have him here today with us. Please welcome Mario Bellini.
Thank you. I still remember when years ago I was very emotional to say something in public, and so I have written a very beautiful story, and then I started reading it, and it was very cold. It was a kind of disaster, but it went off. And I said, I promised myself, never do it again, never, never. And I'm here now reading you a short text. Because I've been asked a few months ago to write something about future, or this monster, future, the house of the future, how we will live in the future, and so and so. And it was a book, and so I had to write a nice story about future. And it went off quite well, and I tried to say something provocative, talking about future. So I would like now to read you this, but it's not too long, to say that there is no future without a very good, thick past. And then I'll show you some of a series of, let's say, visionary masters which have started a century ago thinking about the future, because we cannot discuss about future without knowing what happened already in that very field. And then I will let you see very few of my things with a comparison between something I have designed and what could have been at the base of that way of designing things, referring to our so old and deeply rooted past, because we are living as human beings in home and houses on this earth since centuries and millennia. And so we cannot invent a chair. Who invented the chair? Think about. And so that's to tell you what will happen. I'll try to go quite fast. Let me read this text, which I promised not to do once again. On 24th of August, 79 AD, Anno Domini, at around 1 p.m., Mount Vesuvius exploded unexpectedly. The eruption overwhelmed all the inhabitants of Pompeii and the surrounding areas. It buried their homes, their decorations and splendid frescoes, their furnishing, their carpets, mosaics, statues, fountains, kitchens, ovens, sinks, cutlery, pottery, triclinia, curtains, clothes, impluvia, doors, stairs, windows, roofs, gutters, beds, chairs, pillows, portals, cupboards, silverware, footwear, bathrooms, latrines, lamps, scrolls, jewelry, mirrors, working animals, and pet as well. It buries street, porticos, shops, squares, market, roofs, temples and public buildings of Pompeii and Herculaneum. It buried everything for years until the excavation campaigns unearthed an astonishing vision of a civilization that was still practically intact. But today, we have no ideas whether the people of ancient Rome enjoyed predicting the future of humanity and especially future lifestyles. They didn't think about that. And then we will see it is something which is practiced since no more than 1 century. And so when we talk about future, we should also think about this, because also the future has got its past. I mean, being worried about the future has got a past. Not so long, but at least 1 century. But one thing is sure, the long roster of objects that were buried does not contain a single term or circumstance that isn't already still familiar to us in the area of the so-called Western culture. And this immediately puts everything in a new perspective, because leaving aside the less substantial matters, this would be like saying that almost 2,000 years later, all of us today live in the same way. And so I'm contradicting this big worrying about the future, but I'm doing it in a dialectical way, of course. But that's to say that there is no future without past. And when we design a sofa for the future, you should imagine how much history is behind the concept of a sofa, which goes back to the Turkish Empire, because the D1 was the room where the government was guiding all the laws and the public rules in the country, and they used to stay on a carpet with big cushion. That was the room name of this room was D1, out of which we say divano, for example, in Italian. And so beware of this. And the ability you have when you design anything derives from the fact you are cultivated. You have in your mind, in your past, all these things, all these traits, layers of lives and lives and lives and living, which makes you conscious and able to do something you believe to be a little bit looking to the future. So that said, I will now, using this object, which is already out of place. Put it on, on the 0 position, because this is already advanced.
No.
Okay. This is an image that I like to use whenever possible to say, let's see, look at this image. This is the Villa Stein of Le Corbusier in 1927. What a modern house. Still so modern that is considered futuristic, because very few houses has got this strong modernity inside. And he has taken this picture together with the car, which was modern, was the expression of the progress. Look at the contrast. That is an old, rusted object we can even not understand, and that is still a modern house. That means that whatever is linked to the continuity of our material culture as living human being has got such a long and slow continuity, which builds layer over layer the so-called progress. You know that the concept of progress is getting old. It is wrong. It's outmoded. While with machines, every 5 years they change. They go on and on and on and on, and they are much, much weaker under this point of view. Okay, this was a statement. And then about the visionary masters, I think I can stay here. It works better. Yes, I One of them is Santelia, which is in Italian, and he started imagining our towns being heroically futuristic, and he made such beautiful drawings, you know, them through books. And then there is always somebody today, contemporary, which makes a render of it to make it more real. That is another one of the true Santelia drawings, and another render made by somebody, you know. It was called the Città Nuova, you know, new city. And this is Harvey Willie Courbet. He imagined New York to be designed like this, to separate pedestrian traffic from cars and connecting buildings and making bridges. And it was not so far away, a little bit exaggerated, a little bit exalted by you know, the idea of the future. But in fact, if you consider the subway, more or less, New York is working like this. And then Fritz Lang, the famous filmmaker, imagining Metropolis, 1927, which was also linked about this heroic idea of the city of the future, where everything was connected, new, modern. And again, their Eric Kettelhunt was the, how do you say, the scenographer for them. He imagined for New York something like this, and in fact, we don't know who started first imagining this. And then now we see movies with the most strange things, even James Bond, you know. So look at, again, Fritz Lang with this sketch for Metropolis. There is a robot which is connected with a real man, and they're trying to make something and let that one becoming with the capability of the human being and moving around. And so there are still ideas around. And then Le Grand Maître Le Corbusier, which he has been one of the greatest architects and artists and thinker of our world. But my God, can you imagine to destroy such a portion of Paris to make bam, 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 those buildings just close to the L'Île de France and so on. So it's unbelievable, but he was looking for the future, and he got such a strong idea in his mind, and he didn't care about. Of course, he couldn't do it because they would have killed him, you know. But his engine was the future, you know. Again. Then he was unsatisfied, and he said, "Why don't?" He tried another time. Yes, 5 years later, La Ville Radieuse. La Ville Radieuse again, and for Paris. And he said, "Why don't we do this piece of town? Look at how rational it is, how functional, how modern." Can you imagine Paris with this thing inside? No, nobody would go there, you know. Then he tried in a more flexible way, in a weaker condition, and he tried with Rio de Janeiro. They say you can do this, that. That is a long street, which actually is. With housing underneath between the columns. That could be done, but can you imagine what a social life can people have there? Nothing, you know. kilometer number 25 of the street, But he didn't stop. and, and then le plan au bus for Alger. Most of these places are places where I have been and I visited almost what I'm talking about, And again, there is a street long with this big snakes, habitative snakes, but Alger is, the Casbah is much better, is much living, much full of life, And finally, he started from the man, from the human being, and les unités d'habitation qu'il a imaginé. You find them in Berlin, in Marseille, and some places around. And I mean, in terms of being able to set up urban scenario, they are rather too authoritative. No, you cannot make let's say, a district of many of these. But if you consider the way, the ideology which is behind this kind of big buildings, unité d'habitation, has been able to, starting from the man, to change the idea of the interior human space. Because in fact, this is a very livable kind of idea. You have, this is the back, but on the other side you have double height, the living room, you have a mezzanine, you have the kitchen. So this is really a proposal for a way of living which was innovative and still works around. There are a lot of contemporary houses set up with this idea of three-dimensional space. This is the side where you have the double height light. Then, okay, there is the sun axis and everything, all these stories and so on. A little bit hygienically sustained, which I find a little bit, Look at the chairs. I don't know where they come from, anyhow. Then another big visionary figure, Louis Kahn, which was a very respected, great architect. He came to my architecture faculty and gave us a lecture. I still remember in that step-down big aula, how do you say, aula, hall. We had this man illustrating all these things. He was emotional. And his plan, no, we are not, we are not yet in Louis Kahn. This is Chandigarh again, which the last things I'm showing you about Le Corbusier. And this time has worked. I've been there a couple of times, because I've been many times in India. I'm sorry, I'm impatient you to see. I made a 3, 4, 5 long visitor trip in India. And, it's so difficult to design a city. You settle a city, but no city can be designed by a single human being, because they are stratified and set up layer by layer through history, through wars, revolutions, happy moment, economical possibilities, and then they became the living concrete book of the history of a population. In this case, when you design a town, the so-called ideal city, they are normally a failure. Most of them failed. They are empty, visited by tourists, as a moment of a human being. This works, and I've been recently there, and they are going on using and occupying the portion, and they are full of life. But maybe it went coinciding well with the Indian way of life, Here we are. again, for Chandigarh, this is the public building, for the full city, and this was taken when it was not yet developed and is settled. But it is an interesting building. Look here. This is the entrance of the public building, which I think is the communal building, You see there are little things there. One question is, when you open the windows, how prevent you from falling down? I don't know. But but these are anyhow taming the light and taking care of not having too much direct sun coming into your life, Now, there is Louis Kahn. I've been there a couple of times. And first, I made a conclusion. All what has been built by Louis Kahn, it is still well maintained, perfect. Because he's been using the brick. The brick has got such a long tradition. It's something human. There are things you cannot do with the brick. And so it is preventing you from inventing strange, formal things, because with the concrete, you can pour it and make any shape. But unfortunately, in India mainly, where the way of construction was not so controllable and where the maintenance is equal to zero, all the Corbusier buildings are almost disrupted, gone with steel outside, the concrete getting powder and so on. So I think it will be very probably impossible to restore unless you spend a lot of money. While Louis Kahn is still perfect. This is something to remember. This is the big public library, and those are the houses for the people working on the library. I couldn't enter and see how the interior of those houses with those halls is working, but I'm curious. But I can show you at least a house. This is, let's say, it's the interiors of Escherich House, which is a private house designed by Louis Kahn. And then I've been so pleased to see that he has got this chair, as I do, which are the come si chiamano? Che me le dimentico. The Cerner chairs, which are beautiful objects. And very probably this is the Charles Sims relax chair, easy chair. And this is a very interesting kitchen with such a free flow things. And then with this pathetic cooker. And that is interesting, there is a double height, you see, and is this immersion surrounded all by the green, and so that means Louis Kahn has been working and dedicating himself to the way of living at home, which is the subject we are here for, Then there is another visionary man, and I knew him because he died. I've been there to visit his foolish, how do you say, utopia and dream. I don't know, somebody gave him a piece of land in Arizona, in the desert, and he called the city where he was working Arcosanti, which comes from archaeology. His theory was, we are eating too much soil in our world, so why don't we instead build such, I say, monstrous macro buildings with a lot of family things, lift, move, people mover, and so and so, to concentrate the dealing with water, with how do you say, the remainings and so, the waste, and so and so, which was not a stupid idea on itself. And some of the photo you find here, a photo I have taken during one of my long trips in the States. And here is Paolo Soleri, he illustrating his project. And his idea has been to settle there and to build a city full of these mega structures. Some of them were the kind of big bridges, big towers, and so and so. And the idea has been to hire as workers students, which went there, the students were obliged to build their own concrete boxes to settle, and also to cultivate, orto, a vegetable garden to eat something. And so it was a kind of community which was free. And they started building. When I arrived there by chance, it was a Sunday, there was a big kind of, how do you say, festa, party celebrating the first bridge, which was a piece of one of those gigantic complex, which is this one. And I said, oh my God, 5 lives will not be enough to do. In fact, he went on and on. To sustain himself, they were casting some little bells, and they gave the bells, they sold the bell to the tourists, and so and so and so. But it has been an experience, anyhow. And that is to say that generation before us, they were all thinking about the future, you know. This is a model of Paolo Soleri, one of his complex mega buildings. No? Then here we are. I think this is Jona Friedman, which is another thinker, who imagined this. To make a dense habitative context in order to burn less part of the earth, you know. One question, how can it stay there? But then there was another gentleman, which is Moshe Safdie, which kind of disappeared slowly then, which was very popular during the Montreal World, exactly, 1967. I went there expressly to see everything, and this is much later when it started. It started going. My question is: you got those big windows. If you open that, where do you go? And so there's a bit of terrace somewhere here and there, but it's a mass of people staying all together, and that was called Habitat, no? Habitat 67, staying together, which I suspect very little common life, you know, very little social life. So it's a paradox, you know, all together, but not really. What's this? Okay. Here we are at the point of, moving cities. You remember the metabolists, no? They made this. And I suspect that all those lines, they're a row of living spaces, you know? So you can imagine And they imagine city moving and going here and there, staying together, then separating. And you can imagine this is in New York, I suspect, near New York. Here there is a monster invasion which coming. And those are big apartments, towers, conical, you know. And these are all apartments, and these are maybe big glazed spaces. And so, but anyhow, it was all, they were all putting themselves the same question we are putting us now, you know. This is the same story, but in the desert. That was in the water. Yeah. Cities moving. Okay. And then well, I was preparing this in my office. Somebody which is an expert of that side and also passionate with that side said, "Don't forget the movies." I said, "Oh, you're right. You're right." And there is this sci-fi, you know, science fiction, which, I don't know, is there, and it could be considered an exercise about a possible reality, but anyhow something given to us to make us think about, you know. This is Blade Runner, the famous, this is the first of the series. You remember? This is a huge screen. And there is a kind of desperate, tragic idea about what's going on in our world, and it's trying to prefigure a disaster, a kind of disaster. You know. And then there is another series of this kind, which is called Doctor Strange. I don't know if any of you have seen one of these movies. This is based on the principle that one could take off his mind from his body, and because of the huge of connection and interconnection we are now able to enjoy or to detest or to have, his mind could have a reality vision. This, for example, is 3 times the same things, and there are fractals which moves and multiply themselves, creating the illusion of a space which is, let's say, a suggestion. And this is Elysium, is another story of this kind, where the inhabitants as a kind of lost any hope to be able to go on maintaining the world as it is, because it goes broke, there are a lot of waste, and so, and it's no more possible to go on this way. People is multiplying themselves, and so they imagine to abstract themselves from this world and create a kind of super world for the ones who can do it, which is over there, you see. And they use then the present Earth as the discharging place for their waste. And so this is it. And then Akira is a Japanese cartoon by Kazuhiro Otoma, which also to imagine this kind of catastrophic future becoming all mixed up and so and so. And then we are doing even worse. Look at this. There is something which having a decent kind of urban environment of this, put these monsters inside like that, which reminds me, you know, those animals which sucks your blood? Th- They're awful. How can they imagine to go on? Is that future or is it suicide, you know? In Baku, no? But that is the oil money which makes the ruler becoming crazy, you know? Okay. Dubai, now there is a little rumor about there. I've been there tens of times here and there, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, etc., because we were predicted to design a mega structure for the World Football Championship 1922, which is not yet vanished, but if they go on like this, they won't be ready. And then there have been scandals, you know, about the FIFA, FIFA, and they thought to build this floating island as inhabitative district with that hot water, that misty vapor, and a little bit smelly, and so hot. But that it became an exercise to invest money for stupid people from all over the world. Then they discovered that it was impossible to live there, there is no sense, and then there's been a kind of falling down of the values, and most of them, they let their what they have paid as an anticipation advance payment, and they flew away with the airport, and they disappeared. And most of these places are inhabited, you know. And even this is again Dubai, and they go on, look at, and then it's a kind of race to do it strange. In Rome they say famolo strano. There is this, let us say, kind of défilé of strange towers, which also are used not mostly for people going there, living, or as office or houses. They are goods to invest money on the idea that every year it grows very much until when everything explodes. I found in Beijing a new district, big district, designed by Gregotti Associate, which is a good office, which is now closed. And it got a very nice atmosphere with canal, houses, etc., etc. And I went to the place where you can buy apartments in there, and they said, "Can I buy something?" Just to inform myself. And they said, "No, no, sir, it's everything sold." I said, "But there is no one living there. They're all desert. I only saw a cat." And I saw some how do you say crepa, when something crack, some crack in the building, because they're possibly going down, because if nobody maintains them, again, it was a story of investment. Then, I mean, I normally I would have brought all my works here, showing them. I've done it hundreds, no, well, something less hundreds of times. But I said, we're talking about future. Let's get a little bit fun, you know, discussing when happened this, you know. This is possibly, I don't know, in China somewhere, no? This hanging pot with a fireplace. And this is one of the archetypes, the fire at home. Now is this. Which is horrifying. No, wait a moment. Okay. 77, I designed a chair which called the cab, which you see how it works, no? Leather, a small steel frame, put dressed on it. It became so successful. They've built already 700,000. They sell it all over in the world. But I said, nobody invented the chair. And when you design a chair, you are putting yourself in a flow which is a chair makes a chair, a chair, a chair, a chair. And this is actually the chair of Sennacherib, dignitary of Pharaoh Seti the First. 19th dynasty. No, I can't remember the dynasty. But look at this chair. This chair is exactly our chair. They knew already. Look at the architecture, the engineering of it. The structure here is a frame. This is a spherical bend. This is cylindrical bend, slanted. No, they knew it already. What an interesting story. I didn't see it before. When I wanted to describe my chair, I tried to find some archetypes of this idea, because it's easier. You show this and that, and people understand better. Huh? This, again, is a chair done with flexible panels I have designed, all flexible, done with self-skinning polyurethane injection, which is a new technology, came out in the middle of the 70s, and I made it. But then you look back, it was already there. This is a stone cathedral, medieval. Only a little bit heavier, a little bit less comfortable. No, but the archetype is there, you know. I happen to be a consultant for Olivetti for years, designing all the new machines after the electromechanical era, all the one electronics. And so I had to invent archetypes, because they didn't exist before. This is a very popular now, of course, is old, but calculating machine with a printing unit and so. But then I made these photos, and I remembered that. This is in Palermo, in a museum. No, in Palermo, Antonello da Messina, which is an extraordinary Renaissance painter. Look at this. The relationship between the human being and the object. This is about reading, also about writing, could be. It's something which is magic. It has got something, let's say, sacred in a way. But when you design a machine, you have to understand that behind. Otherwise, you just fulfill functions in a stupid way. You know. Then in the morning, I remember I designed few tables for Cassina. It was a very productive morning. One of them was, take some cylinder, piece of wood, put that, boom, boom. It came out this table called colonnato, which is round, rectangular, square, etc., with 3 columns. And it doesn't need any attachment, any gluing, because you put this, bomb, it stays there. And people say, oh, it throws down your pavement. No, we said, because the surcharge per square meter is so and so, and that is much lesser than people staying in that same area. And so, in fact, never happened something. And this is still popular, and I called it colonnato. We got, of course, our fathers. This is a huge building I have designed in Milano, 1997, and just to tell you, it started 85, because it's a long project. It's a huge building. It's long, half a mile, you know. And it's a fair, Milano Fair, before they moved it out to the city. And then I thought that the reference for it is a city, because it's a wall. This is Montagnana, near Padova. which is a 14th century city. Look at this signs, this wall, you know. This is the famous Piazza delle Erbe in Verona, with this beautiful shape, with the market. Erbe is vegetables. And then when I had to design something in Frankfurt, I made the same shape, I put the umbrella, etc., etc. Then they didn't build it because being an architect is dangerous. I'm out of time. And so designed this, remembering this. I was there. All the places I'm quoting are places I personally saw and visited. This is in Tokyo, the capsule hotel, where the manager going to Tokyo for work from their home by train, then they stay longer in those equivocal bar and places, and they are so late and they lose the train. And then they go sleeping here in this unbelievable place. It's a kind of, let's say, bara. Come si dice bara? Coffin, yeah. Yes. And then you go there and you sleep a little bit if you can, because they have drunk too much. And then they take the first train in the morning and they go home saying, I'm sorry, I was out for work. You understand better here. This is a lamp I have invented, very simple, with the reference, or a table. This table has got many legs, and there is the one with 2, with 3, with 4, and so on. So it is called basilica. But a table is not a functional object. A table is also full of meanings. You know, this is the Last Supper, or you can sign a treaty of peace, or whatever, or is an altar for a sacrifice of Abraham, and so, you know. And so when you design a table, it's a table. It's not a raised floor. Or when you, again, when you use wood, even wood has got a culture, his own culture, you know. This is also very popular. They've done a lot of this. This is the big building you've seen for the fair with the Russian avant-garde presidents. This is in Tokyo, the Tokyo Design Center, and this stepping down because you cannot project shadow, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, and so on in Tokyo. And all this constraint makes your architecture more expressive. And then you can remember the temple of Hatshepsut in Deir al-Bahari in Egypt. The dynasty is the 18th dynasty. It was already done, including the pyramid, which is on the head of my buildings. I didn't know, but then I found it. And this is the last few images, just to tell. We are now investigating about how would modify our way of living, staying in high density and high cost metropolitan areas. This is a research carried on by the MIT with professor and so, which we are studying and trying to implement. Have a look, but then you can go and Google it and study. It's very interesting. Because normally, when you have a regular house, you have half of the house you use it in the day and half during the night. And so you need double space. But if you move things in the same way, you can leave that space during the night and that space during the day, and it's half the cost and half the space. And you can do it with home automation as well. I go fast because I'm already red in punishment area. You see, turning. Even IKEA has now designed one of these things, which are the transformable furniture, that which are all segmented and you see. Sliding rail system, you move them here and there, and then this also. This is Madrid. Somebody used this concept, you know, moving down the space during the night, during the day. Or you turn it, or you see, you can imagine briefly. And then with automation, you can also do this. You do this with hands, and it moves. You do this, and it moves, and so. This is happening, eh? Smart house, micro living, etc., etc. Just to tell you, we are aware of this, and we are considering. And now we. Oh, finito. Available on market. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario Bellini. Would you come just a second with me?
Okay.
This is the punishment zone.
No, it's a pleasure.
I'm joking. So we have understood there's no future without past. This we got. And then I have this question. I know it's a bit like I'm kind of half joking, but still, we don't invent anything. Design